Good afternoon, everyone. It's 12 o'clock now, so we're going to start our webinar today. And thank you for joining us today for our second installment of our February GEL virtual series. My name is Dan Saipon. I'm the director of GEL, which is Global Experiential Learning, and we're going to describe that a little bit more in the future slides. Again, we are not traveling to places because of the pandemic, but we hope to travel soon. So hopefully we can all still mask up and social distance so we can get to different areas of the world soon. I want to introduce my staff that has helped me throughout this webinar, and we have a great webinar for you today. We're going to talk about Italy. It is one of the first hard-hit places with the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're going to kind of walk you through with our colleagues and friends of how it was over there and how it is today. So I want to introduce my team that has been working on this webinar for the past couple of weeks. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Leslie. I am a current senior at the University of Arizona. I am majoring in speech, language, and hearing sciences with a minor in Spanish, and I am a current intern for GEL.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aries. I am also a senior here at the University of Arizona. I am majoring in criminal justice with the minor in psychology, and I am also a GEL intern.
Hi there, my name is Elena Puff. I'm a fourth year PhD student in the school psychology program, and I'm the graduate assistant for GEL. So if we go to the next slide, I want to tell you a little bit more about what GEL is. So GEL stands for Global Experiential Learning, and we are a distinguishable program here at the U of A that seeks to integrate travel, education, and service learning to provide both knowledge and skills to students during their time at the U of A and beyond. We focus our efforts on not only increasing participation, but also access for traditionally marginalized students. More specifically, that means first generation students, DACA undocumented students, and students from low SES backgrounds. Here at GEL, we believe that all students should have access to travel opportunities during their education. Pre-COVID, as Dan mentioned, we offered both domestic and international travel opportunities at little to no cost to students. For some of our trips, students were even able to earn UA direct credit for their courses. The focus of our trips are centered around issues of social justice, environmental justice, cultural identity exploration, and service learning.
Before we continue with this webinar, we at GEL would like to acknowledge the land in which we sit upon. With this being said, we want to share with you this land acknowledgement video that was created by the UA American Indian Alumni Club.
Skikdash Wasajamai, Anian Upjigik, Amy Len Spotted Wolf, Aniapam Amjad, Jud Shaik, Wawikir Dikshan, Thanatam Joed. Annual Miss Indian Arizona 2020-2021. Good day. My name is Amy Lynn Spotted Wolf, and I come from the Fresno Canyon community in the Babiquibi district on the Thanatam Nation. I am a senior here at the University of Arizona studying elementary education under the Indigenous Teacher Education Project. I am Miss Indian Arizona 2020-2021. Samach Achmach An Thanatam Hajurika Dam Oyopo. We acknowledge our presence on the Thanatam ancestral lands. For time immemorial, the Thanatam have been part of this landscape and the University of Arizona. The rich history and connection the Thanatam have to the University of Arizona is visible in the land. The saguaro, agave, ocotillo, and creosote bush used to beautify the university campus are sacred plants to the Thanatam. The mountains that surround the University of Arizona and contribute to the advancement in the studies of the Southwest at the UA are the homes of our ancestors. Babatoag, also known as Mount Lemon, Chimamactoag, also known as Tumamak Hill, Toakuo, also known as Santa Rita Mountains, are just several of the many mountain ranges important to the Thanatam culture and identity. Our connection to the land is living and breathing in us here in Chikshan. We use this connection to the land and our ancestors to guide our studies at the University of Arizona. Tahugi, Sapa, thank you. Skikdash Wasajamai, Anian Upjigik, Amy Len Spotted.
During this webinar, participants will have the opportunity to ask panelists questions using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to ask any question, and we will take the time towards the end of the presentation to answer them.
So now we want to share with you a little bit of a program description in terms of what we're going to be talking about today. So when the COVID-19 pandemic first hit the mainstream media in March of 2020, one of the first publicized locations was Italy. Located in about an hour north of Rome, the Arizona in Orvieto program is one of the most popular study abroad programs affiliated with the University of Arizona. Students are able to earn UA direct credit from this accredited study abroad experience with opportunities to study a variety of subjects in the quaint town of Orvieto, Italy. To speak more about the program and the adjustments they have made in response to the pandemic, JEL will be hosting Dr. Claudio Bizzarri, professor and founder of the program, Alba Frascarelli, professor and program manager, and Dafnhe Romero Johnson, a coordinator for study abroad programs through UA Global. Together, they will share their experience of how Italy has been impacted and has responded and acclimated to this new sense of normalcy during the pandemic.
Please join us in welcoming our panelists. First, we have Dr. Claudio Bizzarri. He was born in Italy but holds dual citizenship. He has received his PhD from the University of Perugia on a topic connected with the import of antique pottery in Etruria, the vases used in the symposium by the Etruscans. Hence, he is a classical archaeologist, and over more than 4 decades, he has been the scientific director of several digs in the hot Italian summers. He still explores the underground, fascinating system of man-made caves that exist in the Orvieto area. He is a resident professor at Arizona in Italy and is one of the founders of the program almost 20 years ago.
Next, we have Alba, who was born and raised in Italy, where she started her career in archaeology after getting her master's degree in classics and Mediterranean archaeology at the University of Perugia. Also passionate with languages and travels, in the spring of 2000, she enthusiastically accepted a position as a visiting scholar at the Ruth Patrick Science Educational Center, affiliated with the University of South Carolina, developing the project You Be the Archaeologist for elementary and middle school students. Attending conferences in the US, she was lucky enough to meet UA Regents professor David Soren. This connection led to the creation of the Arizona and Orvieto program in the fall of 2002. Since then, Alba has served as program manager, welcoming almost 2,000 students to Orvieto, which has become the location for the largest UA study abroad program.
Dafnhe is a proud Tucson native and earned her bachelor's in history and master's in secondary education at the UA. She had the opportunity to live and work in Abu Dhabi for a couple years, during which time she traveled and explored various countries. Upon returning home, she knew she wanted to share her passion for intercultural experiences with students and inspire them to study abroad. She is eager to utilize her knowledge, skills, and values towards serving students and helping them on their life-changing journeys. Dafnhe loves to spend her time outdoors, photographing nature, and maintaining a mini farm with her husband that consists of dogs, goats, and chickens. She aspires to have an animal rescue that is surrounded by lush jungle someday. We will now present our panelists.
Thank you for the introductions, and I just wanted to start off with a quick glimpse of Orvieto. As you can see, it is a beautiful place. Pretty much everywhere you walk is a beautiful view that seems like it could grace any postcard. So I just wanted to start with that quick picture. Next slide, please. And I want to also talk a little bit about Orvieto. As you can see where it is located on the map, it is a hilltop town in the region of Umbria called the Green Heart of Italy. And as you could see from that beautiful picture before, the cliff that it's located on is about the size of the U of A campus. So it's not too terribly huge, but it is conveniently located about an hour and a half from either Rome or Florence. And it has a great way of combining the beautiful countryside of Umbria and this small town feel. It is also surrounded by treasures from the Etruscan period, the Gothic era, and the Renaissance. And it is, of course, one of the great centers for Italian art and archaeology, but definitely well known and renowned for its amazing food and wine. Next slide, please. I do want to talk a little bit about the Arizona and Oviedo program. It is, of course, one of the most popular study abroad programs we offer currently. As we mentioned previously, students would earn U of A credit through a broad variety of courses that are offered that are taught both by local Italian faculty and UA professors who travel there as well. Students from all majors are welcome to attend and can spend a summer or a full semester abroad in Oviedo. Some of the course subjects include archaeology, anthropology, architecture, classics, communication, Italian, and more. So you can see it's kind of a wide range. And integrated along with the academics, students can also participate in numerous cultural experiences, field trips, and museum visits throughout their time abroad. With that, I pass it on to our next panelists. Next slide, please.
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to thank Dan and his staff for allowing us to be here with you today. It's important for us to share our experience. And we will go through a little bit of history of what, you know, the pandemic did to our country. Keep in mind, it's a small country. Keep in mind, Oviedo, it's a small city. So all of it, you know, has to be set in the correct context. In the month of January, we start to have serious problems. And at the end of January, basically the first 2 people resulted to be positive to COVID-19 in Italy. And this will show that afterwards that it was not true at all, because the virus was already around in our country since November of the year before. So, you know, things have been updated quite a bit. Next slide, thank you. In February, so we keep on moving chronologically, there was a big, huge soccer game. When you know, Italians are kind of obsessed by soccer, which took place in a stadium in Milan. There were more than 50,000 people that attended the team itself, the game. And that, of course, meant that people were one near the other, no protections at all. And there were people that moved from the city of Bergamo, almost a third of the population of the city, that went to Milan. And that was really what was described as Game Zero, that it started in Bergamo, which was one of the hardest places that was, you know, hard to live in when the pandemic developed. Next slide, thank you. Always in February, we have the first attested case of COVID in a young man in Codogno. He's 30 years old. And this is something that, you know, will shock a little bit the population of Italians, young people that get, you know, sick. And he survived. So he was thought to be, again, patient number 1. That, as I said before, changed a little bit. The areas of 11 cities in northern Italy are now starting to be under what it's called a strict lockdown. So you cannot get in, you cannot get out. You have to stay home. That's the idea.
Hi, so this is us with our students a few days before the first case of COVID in Lombardy. We were celebrating Mardi Gras with Mexican food, having fun, and of course, little we knew our life was going to drastically change very soon. Next slide, please. So COVID cases are fast escalating at the beginning of March. All the schools are closed in Italy, and Italy goes under a very strict lockdown. Pretty much, we can only leave our houses to go get groceries, to see a doctor, or in case of an emergency. We can barely go for a walk very close to our house, but nothing more than that. Unfortunately, as people understood what was going to happen, they left their workplaces in northern Italy to go back to their hometowns in southern Italy. And this caused the diffusion of COVID in areas that had been so far untouched. You might like ask yourself why people from northern Italy would go back to southern Italy. It's because in northern Italy, there are many more opportunities for jobs. So people that are born in southern Italy often end up working in northern Italy. The fact that there was going to be a lockdown most likely forced them somehow to try and go back to their families. But unluckily, again, this caused the virus to spread more easily. Next, please. This is March the 8th. It's one day that I will never forget because we were forced pretty much because of the schools being closed all over Italy to send our students home. And this is how our classrooms were sadly empty after March the 8th. This was really one of the most challenging things for us and for the students. And I will never again forget the day I had to share this news with them. One of our students from Spring 2020 is joining the webinar, and I would like to introduce her. She's Brianna, and she's also being our intern for the Spring 2021. And I would like her to share her experience with COVID and study abroad in Italy.
Hello, my name is Brianna. Yeah, I studied abroad spring 2020. It was an unreal experience to say the least. And even talking about it right now just makes me remember just how crazy these times were and how crazy they still are. But yeah, so when we went there, we went January 26th. That's when we arrived in Orvieto. And, you know, we heard about Corona, but it was only in China. And, you know, it wasn't something that we could really be concerned about. So we didn't really think about it too much. And it started to become more serious when, you know, the first case appeared in northern Italy. And sorry, I had somebody in here. But yeah, the first case appeared in northern Italy, and it was interesting because when, like, I think a week before Milan closed down was me and a couple of girls actually went to Milan. So when we came back and everyone heard Milan closed down right after we came back to Orvieto, people were like, "Are you okay?" Like they kind of kept their distance from us because they weren't sure since we were just in Milan. Um, but it was very a surreal experience, and it was interesting to see two different countries react to it because, as we know, like Italy was one of the first epicenters outside of China after the pandemic broke out. So I feel like I experienced the beginning of the pandemic twice in a way because I experienced Italy closing down and going into lockdown. The day before we left, all of the schools closed down. So that was like a crazy thing to hear. I remember sitting at like the dinner table with my host family and having the news on and having the president like interrupt like programs to give like more corona updates and asking my host family like, is this as serious as if the United States president were to come up and give COVID updates? And they said yes, it was a very serious thing. We had a lot of different activities canceled before we even left Orvieto. Like we had a pasta workshop we were supposed to do. It was canceled because of COVID. And so again, like I just really feel like I experienced the beginning of the pandemic twice because I experienced it in Italy. And then when we left, um, you know, we came back to the US, they weren't taking it seriously yet. And it still wasn't really a thing here because we left like around March 8th. And for about 10 days here, everything was completely normal. Like I remember all of my family came to see me still, and I was like, don't come see me, like there's a pandemic, and they just couldn't understand that. All of my friends wanted to go out, and I'm like, well, why would you go out? Like there's a pandemic, but they still didn't understand it because it just wasn't as big of a thing here yet. And then sure enough, 2 weeks later, the US also goes on lockdown, and it was just interesting to see how both countries handled the beginning of this pandemic.
Okay, so I'm back and I'd like to have the next slide, please. keep moving on with our chronohistory, let's call it this way. So, you know, Italians are, again, as I said, a small population. There are just, 60 million of us, not even that. And they really feel that they can get together. And what first started to be seen very quickly was the positive aspects of the reaction of the Italians. Balconies were full of rainbows. The famous phrase was "andrà tutto bene," it'll be okay, everything will be okay. Next. And yeah, this is an interesting photo. It gives you the idea. You could not move and visit your neighbors, but you could exchange coffee from your windows. Again, next. March. So we keep on moving on. It's the first time that the government approved a 23 billion euros economical support for the Italians. And, a lot of them will follow. And still, we are so far away from retrieving from the economical problems that we will have, because nothing is done yet. Next. We like symbols, and I think that this is one of the most amazing pictures and most shocking for the Italians. That really gives the idea. At that time, as I said, shocked a lot of people, I think throughout the world. It is St. Peter's, and usually the square is full of people. And in this case, we only had Pope Francis alone in the square, because nobody was allowed to get in. But he still wanted to be connecting with people. Next. That same day, we had the highest number of deaths, which for us was almost 1,000 people that died in a single day. In March the 28th, just again to give you another balance, the USA in the North America, the country, started to be the one with more deaths in the world. So things are unfortunately spreading heavily everywhere. Next. May 4th. It's the starting point for what the Italian government calls phase 2. We are in phase 3 right now, let's put it this way. Things seems to be under control, keep in mind this phrase. And more than 4 million of Italians now can go back to work, which means physical being there on their jobs. It is possible, again, to visit friends and relatives. That it's really important for Italians. Bars and restaurants are opening up again, which are important as a social connecting point. But we have to wear masks, and you have to use what at the beginning was called social distancing. It's physical distancing. There's nothing has to do with the social aspects. Next. Always in May, we have the second big, huge help. 55 billions of euros come to help people who didn't really lost their jobs, but of course, no tourists, for example, which is one of the most important affairs in Italy. And that means that clearly there is no income for an enormous amount of people. Think about big, huge cities like Rome, Venice, Florence, empty, no tourists around. And we really felt that as a very, very clear sign of the crisis that was spreading throughout the world. On May the 21st, the director of the area at the Milan hospital, which is one of the most well-known hospitals in Italy, says in an interview that the virus from a clinical point of view does not exist anymore. He was so wrong. Unfortunately, there's this kind of aspects connected with showing up on a video show, on TV shows that should be banned up to some extent. Next.
Okay, this is going to be mine. Yes, so what's happening during the summer with probably the summer season helped a little bit. So we have lower numbers of positive cases, and Italy finally enters phase 3. pretty much all the venues are reopened, museums, gyms, children can play outside, theaters reopen. Of course, there is always strong attention to social physical distancing, and of course, we still need to wear masks, etc. One thing that did not work well was an app that was created by the government to trace positive individuals and their contacts. But for some reason, Italians didn't really jump on it. And because some of them said for like privacy reasons, which doesn't seem very reasonable, but there are not enough Italians that are downloading the app to make it work well. Next, please. So the other thing that is really important happening in July is that the number of people in intensive care drops from over 4,000 to 38. So this is like a signal for us, for Italians, that life is going back to normal. People feel confident, feel very optimistic about what's going to happen next. And they go on vacation, they travel domestically. Of course, very few people will leave Italy, but they are traveling, they are going on vacation, they are ready for a new normal. Next, please. So Sardinia is a very beautiful island in the Mediterranean Sea. It's a very popular destination with summer vacation, pristine beaches, beautiful resorts, very trendy discos. Among them, the Billionaire, you see a picture of it here, is one of the most striking examples of how irresponsible was somehow the answer of the owner of this disco, but also people that would go there. Every night there were thousands of people, like being very close to each other, leaving behind fear and precautions. But the result of it was that, unluckily, a high percentage of them got positive and then transmitted the virus to their families and communities when they went back home. So pretty much you see that this is a recurring thing. I mean, when people start not to be careful and start not following the rules, we go back to a second crisis. Next slide, please. In fact, the consequence of this behavior during the summer, these loosening the restrictions and being constantly among other people. The consequences, we will see them in October, especially when we experience an intense second wave, during which we have a dramatic number of over 31,000 new cases in just one day. Of course, this calls for new restrictions to be put in place. And so restaurants, bars, gyms, everything is closed once again. Next is for Claudio, I think.
Yes, here I am. Clearly Italians, or at least the ones especially, that are really, really concerned about their working positions, start to be a little bit worried. And there is also some type of social problems that is starting to be clearly felt around the entire peninsula. And this leads to protests, to fights, because, people want not only to be able to go out and do whatever they want, but they also want to be able to work. And this is something which, especially in big cities, leads to fights against the Carabinieri and the police. Naples is a very important case for that. Next. And yeah, these are the didactic activities that now are only online. So students stay home. Schools, as we said, are closed, and small business start to close, not because they really cannot be open, but because a lot of them, for example, cannot do it anymore. It's the economical problem. Here on this protest, you see one writing that says, the worst virus is improvisation. You know, people that die from COVID and people that die because they're hungry. So this is the idea that starts to be, rooting among the Italians. Next. So Italy now, it's since November, divided in colors. The regions of Italy are divided in colors, depending on several type of parameters. The yellow one is the easiest one. It goes through the orange one up to the red one, which is the worst. And let's see what that means. If we can go to the next one. Here, yellow zone. The RT index is below 1. It's the number of people who are going to prove positive on 100,000 inhabitants. So this is one of the indexes that it's taken care of. You have to be home at 10 o'clock at night, and you can get out at 5 o'clock in the morning. So no night activities. Museums, unfortunately, are allowed to reopen only on weekdays, which doesn't really help, because if you want museums to work, they have to be open also in the weekends. Restaurants, bars, pubs, bakeries, gelateria, very important for Italians, close at 6 p.m. After that, only takeaway and delivery is allowed. And that, of course, is something that hits, it's better than nothing, you would say, but it's for the economical aspects of running a job, it's a problem. Shopping malls are to stay closed on weekends so that people do not gather. This is the idea. Other stores, grocery, newsstands, tabacchis, and other shops, which you wouldn't think that tabacchi is an essential good, but Italians thought it was, will be open as usual. Next. This is the orange one. As you see, the RT index is higher than 1. And we still have the curfews. You have to stay within the boundaries of your town or of your region, unless you really need to move, but you have to prove that. So you always have to write down what it's called an autocertificazione. So you certify, and it's going to be taken by the police if they stop you, and they're going to check on it if you're saying the correct things or not. Same thing for restaurants and bars. And shops here, saloons and beauty centers are to remain open because they're considered to be important for, at least the idea that people have of a normal life. Same thing for shopping malls. Next, eccole qua. This is the worst case, red zone. It's what we would call a lockdown. And so you have to stay home. Basically, this is the idea. Don't move. Don't visit people. Don't have guests. Be careful about when you move. Of course, all of these 3 different types of situations need masks and physical distancing. There are regulations that will be fined from 400 to 1,000 euros, depending on where you're found and what's going on. Next. This is what we will hope will change shortly, the entire situation, vaccines. We started vaccinating people. Up to now, we have 1,289,000, a little bit more than that, because this is updated to the 16th of February. People that have been vaccinated with the 2 double shots. And the problem is not really the people that want the vaccine. All the Italians, really the majority of them, do want to be vaccinated. They're always asking when it's my turn, when it's my turn. So it's really something that they feel they should do. The problem is the companies that produce the vaccines. They've signed for a certain number of million of doses, and they're delivering, I wouldn't say half of it, but almost. So that is a big, huge problem that will need to be solved somehow. We don't know exactly. The government is starting to think that they should start producing them instead of buying them from somewhere else. Next one. This is divided by age and gender. As you see, the highest number is from the age of 50, 59, which is most of the people that work, for example, in the hospitals. And then you move, as you see, down depending on the age and the amount of people that already got the vaccines. Next one, please. And this is the division that we have for people, as in most of them are, and the first ones to be vaccinated are the people who work in the hospitals, and they have to deal, of course, with patients in general. Then people that are not into the healthcare system, but like think about police, all these people that have to be in contact with people no matter what. And then the guests of strutture residenziale, it's where all elder people go and have a new home, because they're really the target for the virus itself. And then we just started to give vaccines to the people who are over 80, and it will hopefully be fairly quick. I mean, we don't have problems connecting with them. We don't have problems giving the possibility to be vaccinated. The only problem we don't have the vaccines that we need. Otherwise, for example, Umbria, it's just a small region right there in the middle. It's has been given a certain amount of vaccines, and they used it 100%. So all of them that we have been used, which is, of course, a good sign, but we need a lot more. Next one, please. Okay, this is Alba's turn now.
Yeah, so finally, we want to look at Italy's future and the future of study abroad. I must say that there are some good news that we want to share with you. First of all, while US citizens are generally not allowed to enter Italy, traveling for study purposes is permitted. So as long as students have a letter of acceptance for a study abroad program in Europe, in Italy, they can enter Italy with no issues. Then also, we are allowed so far to have in-person classes with a reduced number of students, because of course classrooms cannot be crowded. But it is a big thing for us because, I mean, we've tried teaching online. We finished the spring 2020 teaching online, but we believe that the in-person experience can be way more enriching and active, so to say. So we are really looking forward to have in-person classes. And unless things change, we should be able to. Also, the other big good news is that you can avoid the 14-day quarantine. As you know, in most cases, traveling to most countries, you need to be in quarantine for 2 weeks, 14 days. That is a pain, of course, because if you come to Italy, you need to rent an apartment or stay in a hotel for 2 weeks. You cannot go out, so there would be someone that comes and brings food to you, but you cannot go out pretty much for any reason unless it's an emergency. So it would be time wasted, money wasted. Of course, if necessary, we will help students find a place and we will provide food to the students, but by far, the best option is to choose what is called a COVID-free flight. Let me explain you how it works. So if you choose a COVID-free flight, you need to fly out of New York City, JFK, or Newark, or from Atlanta, and arriving to Rome, Fiumicino. Fiumicino is the most important airport in Rome. So before you leave, so 48 hours before boarding, you need to get a molecular or antigenic COVID test. You need to show it as you're boarding. And then once you arrive in Fiumicino, they will give you another test. If both tests, of course, the first test needs to be negative. If the test taken in Fiumicino is also negative, you won't need to go on quarantine. So if you are traveling, if you're planning, considering studying abroad in Italy, I definitely suggest you to look into these COVID-free flights. Next, please. So of course, students' health and well-being have always been our priority, and now more than ever. Orvieto is a small town, and as you saw in the first slides, it is like a natural fortress. Currently, we have 25 positive cases, so we're doing pretty well, keeping fingers crossed. Of course, wearing a mask, carefully following social physical distancing, washing hands, checking any possible COVID symptoms are the best practices to protect not only yourselves, not only students and staff, but also our community. Orvieto is a town with sort of an old town. There are a lot of elderly people, maybe because we live longer, as it's such a healthy place, I would say, to live. So I think that taking care of these easy, well-shared little things, we might be able to have a good semester in Orvieto. Next, please. Some of you might wonder what the housing accommodations would be. Now, we have students' apartments all over the town on the hilltop. So they're all close to each other and to the school. We will accommodate no more than 2 students per bedroom, which will share 1 bedroom. So for example, if you look at the picture on the screen now, this apartment has a large dining living room, and then there are 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. So this apartment will host 4 students. A housekeeper will come, will clean and disinfect the apartment for you once a week. She or he will also wash your sheets, change your sheets and towels. And we will recommend students to keep common areas as clean and disinfected as possible. Now, what about having guests in your apartment? That is strongly discouraged. I mean, it might happen that a friend from the program comes and visits, but the rule is that there cannot be more than 6 people in one apartment at any time. And actually, the police can come and check on it. And as we saw, the fine for breaking the COVID rules are 400 euros per person. So you don't want to do that. And of course, we want guests that are not part of the program to be in our students' apartments. Next, please. And again, classes in Orvieto. So this is the ceiling of the most beautiful classroom that we have in our school building. The classroom space has already been reorganized with 50% of the seats that you use, so that each desk is far from the next one for at least a meter. And the other thing that we will do, as all schools do in Italy, students and staff will have their temperature checked every morning as they enter the school. If it's higher than 99 degrees Fahrenheit, they won't be admitted and they will have to go and get a COVID test as soon as possible. What happens if a student results positive? What we will do is, of course, call a doctor. We have a doctor that has been working with us for many years. He speaks good English, actually. He is married to a former student of ours. So Orvieto makes that love miracle too. And he will, of course, we can have an apartment, like a single room apartment, an apartment for just one student where the student will be isolated. So the doctor will come and check on the students when necessary. God forbid, if he needs to go to the hospital, there is a hospital in Orvieto that can take care of these cases, or if, again, in the worst case scenario, the student will be transferred to a nearby hospital. So we have already in place all the measures that we would have to take if a student gets sick. And again, with the school, we are trying to make sure that we are able to have in-person classes, but of course we'll abide by any regulations and restrictions that might be put in place during our program. Next, please. So this is another thing that students might be curious about. What we'll be able to do or not to do? I cannot really answer this question because it's impossible to predict what type of regulations and restrictions will be in place at the program's time. But suppose that borders in between regions will be open, as we hope and we expect, because we've seen that in the summer, usually the trend is more, is safer, is easier. So if that happens, we will be in a very favorable position because Orvieto, as we saw, is halfway in between Tuscany, where Florence is, and Lazio, where Rome is. So we can reach probably the two most important, most interesting cities in Italy within an hour and a half. So we will try, of course, to do that, but if that won't be possible, there are plenty of activities, visits that we can do in and around Orvieto. The slide that you see shows our spring 2020 students as they were taking a pizza workshop. So there was a chef that she's a pizza expert. She teaches in schools how to make the perfect Italian pizza. And our students did their pizza step to step. And there are beautiful hikes that we can take. There are site visits in Orvieto. Orvieto is, again, one of the most important towns as far as art and history and archaeology go. Also, we've been doing a lot of activities for 19 years. So we know all the ins and outs of the artisans in Orvieto, the chefs, the chocolate chef. We have marble paper making, we have leather working. There is the longest list of activities that can keep you entertained, but also you will learn a lot from these activities. Now, other questions that you might have. Will I be able to travel during the weekend? That will depend. Any independent travel must be submitted to me, meaning that I need to know where you plan, where you're planning to go, and how are you planning to reach your destination. If the destination is in an area that has a high number of cases of COVID, you won't be able to go. If you need to go on very crowded public transportation, you won't be allowed to go. But if things are sort of safe, you might. So we will have, again, even with that, decide case by case. International travel won't be allowed because, believe me, you don't want to go into the crazily complicated requirements when you travel from one country to the other in Europe. And we don't want students to get stuck somewhere with no support in case they need help or in case they need seek. So international travel, next time you come to Europe, I would say. And I'm happy to see this slide, last slide for our presentation. We really look forward to welcoming students back in Italy. So I hope that this dream for us will come real soon. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for sharing your experience and knowledge. Let me turn on my camera. Just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Vanessa Madrid. I am a senior at the U of A and also an intern for GEL. So now we will transition to the Q&A portion of this webinar. We want to begin by addressing the questions that you all put in the chat. The first question here is, what were the procedures to evacuate students when the pandemic started? And this question is for everyone, whoever wants to jump in.
When we were learning about the situation becoming worse and worse, we were constantly in touch with the U of A, and we were collecting and sharing information. And I would say that the fact that sort of forced us to repatriate our students was when Italy declared that all the schools were going to close. At that point, we couldn't have classes anyway, so we collectively decided to repatriate students with the U of A, and we tried to help students arrange for their travel plans, which was not easy, of course.
Okay, thank you. There's a next question. Are there any anti-vaxxers or anti-believers like here in the US? If so, how is this handled in Italy?
I think I can answer that easily. Yes, we do have, but it's really a minority. And they're studying also some type of responses that can be given. Like, for example, you cannot be an anti-vaccine if you are in the health system. Clearly, I mean, if you work with patients, with people who are sick, you have to be protected and you have to protect them. So this is another step. And as I said before, you know, for the vaccines themselves, people are eager to be vaccinated. They want to go back to the normal life. And this is one way.
Thank you. Another question here, it says, do you notice if there's still any tourists traveling in Orvieto despite the pandemic?
Well, during spring 2020, Orvieto looked like a ghost town. It was painful, really. It felt almost like unsafe because there were no people around. But as cases went down and the lockdown was lifted in June, we had hordes of Italian tourists coming to Orvieto. I was impressed by, there were people waiting in line under the sun at 3 p.m. waiting to get into the Duomo, waiting to get into St. Patrick Well. So clearly Italians were really eager to start traveling again, exploring the beautiful cities in Italy. Hotels, B&Bs, museums, restaurants, everything was packed and full. So it really felt like we were finally catching our breath and again, going back to normal. After that, after October and the second wave, of course, we see a few tourists, but this is not really tourist season. Usually the tourist season starts in April. So we hope that Italians will be able to travel as we keep our efforts containing the virus. Of course, tourism is one of the biggest part of the economy in Italy. So freezing tourism will make so many activities, restaurants, shops, like go bankrupt pretty much. A lot of them are closing because of the COVID situation.
That's interesting that you talk about the financial situation, because there's a question here that says, can you speak a little more about the economic impact from COVID in Orvieto as well as Italy as a whole?
I can try to summarize that. Of course, Italy is divided in macro regions as well. So the northern area is the one which is a very high type of job employment, which is connected with big factories. And then central Italy, it's more connected with, as Alba was saying, tourism, culture. The southern area, it's more connected with the environment, and we have the most beautiful beaches that you can think of: Puglia, Sicily, Calabria. So it's different on how it works. But clearly, as I said before in one of the slides, we are crazy for soccer, but we're also crazy for food. So people try to move around Italy, and you can move within 30 miles and you'll find a complete different environment. That helps on how people are basically visiting, even if they're Italians, not only non-Italians. The economical impact has been devastating because people don't move. And as I said, there has been a big, huge effort from the government in billions and billions of euros. And we are now preparing a big, huge European project. Italy is going to be the nation, the country that's going to get the most out of it from what it's called the Recovery Fund from the European community, an enormous amount of money. And, Europe works because clearly it's money of the Europeans, it's not the money of the Italians. And they're going to one of the nations that has been hit the most severely than anybody else.
There are a couple more questions here, but I'll only do one since we're running out of time. Are we being charged the same amount as a normal year? If something changes and we don't get the full experience, will we get a refund or a compensation? And then in parentheses, it says, we already can't travel like normal times. This impacts our experience.
Dafnhe, do you want to get this one?
Absolutely. So for the Arizona and Orvieto, the program cost is on the website. And if that is a concern, it's a very legitimate and valid concern. And I think that we have tried, Alba, Claudio, and us have tried to lay out what it's currently like and try to have appropriate expectations. If that's something that students don't feel comfortable or ready for, hopefully that you can consider maybe a future term or something like that. I think that regardless if students go abroad this summer or not, they will find positive experiences and learning experience. No matter where you go, you will learn and you will be, in a new environment, pushed out of your comfort zone, all those other benefits that come naturally, I guess, from study abroad. But that is definitely a very understandable and legitimate concern. And for the applicants for the program for this summer that are currently on this Q&A, we will be having another webinar to kind of go through a little bit more nitty-gritty details with Alba in the near future. So you can expect some more communication from both of us in the upcoming days, probably next week.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Dafnhe. So thank you for all your questions and all your answers. We will now move forward with Ari's.
Next slide, Anna, please. Oh, thank you. So in closing, we would like to thank our panelists for their time today. Adding on, I want to mention that our post-assessment is attached onto this slide, so feel free to take out your phone, scan and fill it out as soon as possible, or click the link that Elena just dropped in the chat. We want to reiterate that completing this assessment will count as your attendance to this webinar. Thank you for joining us, as well as the panelists and the attendees. We hope you enjoyed our presentation. Actually, tomorrow we have our presentation at 12 p.m. with the Divine Nine. So hopefully we can see more panelists for there as well. We're super eager to get traveling again, so please stay safe, mask up, and bear down. Thank you.